video. Sorry for maybe talking fast in for a little bit, just because I've got so much space left on my tablet and all. And yeah, moving on. Here we go with third and final country of the day, which is Israel/Palestine, as yeah, they kind of share the same borders and all. And when scholars refer, and going on to history, is when scholars refer to ancient Israel, they often refer to tribes, kingdoms and dynasties formed by the ancient Jewish people in the Levant area, an area that encompasses modern-day Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, Jordan and Syria. And scholars draw largely upon the three sources to reconstruct the history of ancient Israel: archaeological excavations, Hebrew Bible, and texts that are not found in the Hebrew Bible. And the use of the Hebrew Bible poses difficulty for scholars, as some of the accounts are widely thought to be mythical. And yeah, in early history of Israel, the earliest mention of the word Israel comes from a stele, an inscription carved on stone, erected by the Egyptian pharaoh Meneptah, whose reign was about 1213 to 1203 BC. His inscriptions mention the military campaign in the Levant, which meant Meneptah claims to have laid waste to Israel among other kingdoms and cities in the Levant. The Hebrew Bible claims that the Jewish people fled Egypt as refugees, arriving with some divine help in what is now in the Levant, which Meneptah claims to have laid waste. Whether there is any truth in the biblical account is a point of contention among modern-day scholars and all. And some scholars think that there was no exodus from Egypt. Other things that some of the Jewish people could have fled Egypt at some point during the second millennium BC. And in his papers and lectures, James Hoffmeyer, an archaeologist and professor at Trinity International University, points out that people from the Levant did live in Egypt at different points in Egypt's history, and he also notes as an ancient history of Ramesses mentioned the Exodus story told of the Hebrew Bible does not exist in archaeologists have determined that it flourished for several centuries during the second millennium BC, becoming abandoned about 3,100 years ago. And according to a man named, in the Hebrew Bible, a man named David rose to be Israel's king after slaying a giant named Goliath, a battle that led to the rout of the Philistine army. And King David led a series of military campaigns that made Israel a powerful kingdom centered in Jerusalem, according to the Hebrew Bible anyway. And after the death of King David, his son Solomon took over the kingdom and constructed what is now called the First Temple, which is a place where God was worshipped. And the temple was located in Jerusalem and contained the Ark of the Covenant, which in turn contained tablets inscribed with the Ten Commandments, and which other most scholars know about King David comes from the Hebrew Bible, though fragments of an inscription found at the archaeological site of Tzadon in 1993 mentioned a house of David, and a fragmented inscription dates back to over 2,800 years. And although the meaning of the words is debated by scholars, many think that it provides evidence that a ruler named David really did exist. And however, a number of archaeologists have noted that evidence for King David's supposedly vast kingdom is scarce, and Jerusalem, which was supposed to be King David's capital, appears to have been sparsely populated around 3,000 years ago. Says Israel Finkelstein, a professor at Tel Aviv University. Over the centuries of archaeological explorations in Jerusalem, the castle of the glamorous biblical United Monarchy, failed to reveal the evidence of anything meaningful. 7th century building activity, wrote Finkelstein in a paper published in 2010. and in the book One God, One Cult, One Nation, Archaeological and Biblical Perspective. As Finkelstein says that King David's kingdom was most likely a more modest state. And over the past few years, a 3,000-year-old site now called Kirbet Koyafa has been excavated by a team of archaeologists and located in West Jerusalem. The site's excavators have been adamant that Kirbet Koyafa was controlled by King David. No, they've even gone so far as to claim that they found a place that may have belonged to King David, as the excavators are currently preparing for finds for publication. After the death of King Solomon, which happened to be around 930 BC, the kingdom split into a north kingdom which retained the name Israel and a southern kingdom called Judah, and a name after the tribe of Judah that dominated the kingdom. Accounts of the Hebrew Bible suggest that grievances over tax and free labor that had been done for the state played a role in the breakup. As the Hebrew Bible says, at the time of the breakup, an Egyptian pharaoh named Shishak launched a military campaign, carrying out a successful raid against Jerusalem, taking royal booty back home with him. And Egyptian records say that around this time, the pharaoh named Shishong I ruled Egypt and launched a military campaign in the Lebanon, conquering a number of self-settlements. However, it's unclear from the surviving evidence whether Shishong successfully attacked Jerusalem, and many scholars believe that Shishak and Shishong were essentially the same person, the same pharaoh and all, and although the account of the military expedition to the Hebrew Bible may not be fully accurate. And Israel and Judah coexisted for about 2 centuries, often fighting with each other, and the war lasted. They engaged and destroyed Israel but left Judah intact. For its destruction, Israel also fought against a non-Jewish kingdom called Moab, and in the 9th century BC Stele created a Moabite king who discusses the conflict between Israel and Moab, and now in the Louvre Museum in Paris. And between the 9th and 7th centuries BC, the Assyrian Empire grew in size, conquering an empire that stretched to modern day Iraq to the borders of Egypt, and the Assyrian Empire grew and it came into contact with both Israel and Judah. The Black Obelisk of Shalmaneser III claims that an Israeli king named Jehu was forced to pay tribute to Assyrian king Shalmaneser III. He reigned from 859 to 824 BC, and the obelisk is now in the British Museum. As a Hebrew state showing at this time that Israel's king Pekah, who reigned from about 735 BC, the Assyrian king Tiglath-Pileser III from 745 to 722 BC launched a military campaign that led to the loss of several cities that Israel controlled, and Israel's losses mounted. Pekah was assassinated and a new king was named Hosea, who took control of what was left of Israel. Accounts recorded from the Hebrew Bible suggested that the Assyrian campaign against Israel was part of a larger war in which Israel and Judah fought against each other, and the Assyrians siding with Judah and a kingdom named Aram siding with Israel, as Hoshea was forced to pay tribute to the Assyrians, also the Hebrew Bible says, as the rebellion but was crushed by Assyrian forces in around 723 BC. The exact date isn't exactly clear, as the kingdom of Israel then came to an end and the remaining territory was incorporated to the Assyrian Empire, and many Israelites were deported to Assyria, as the Hebrew Bible says that Judah was the last Jewish kingdom standing, although it was forced to pay tribute to Assyria. And in 705 BC, Sennacherib came into the throne of Assyria and not long afterwards launched a military campaign against Judah, culminating a siege of Jerusalem in 701 BC. Both Hebrew Bible and cuneiform texts tell the siege. Hebrew Bible says that Terakwa, who controlled both Nubia and Egypt, marched against Sennacherib sometime that may at the end of the siege. As Hebrew Bible also states at one point, the angel of the Lord went out and put death at 108 to 5,000 in the Syrian camp. While the people got up the next morning, there were all dead bodies. There are 2 Kings 19:35 and Isaiah 37:36. And the cuneiform texts of the Assyrian wrote also say that Sennacherib failed to take Jerusalem, and they don't specify why, saying only that Sennacherib trapped Hezekiah, king of Judah, in Jerusalem, like a caged bird, and the Assyrian king captured other cities that Hezekiah had control. And the Assyrian texts claim that Hezekiah paid an enormous amount of tribute to Sennacherib before the Assyrian king went home. And ultimately it wasn't the Assyrians that destroyed Judah. Nearly a century after Sennacherib's unsuccessful siege of Jerusalem, a Babylonian king named Nebuchadnezzar II conquered much of Assyria's former empire and laid siege to Jerusalem and deported many of Judah's inhabitants to Babylonia. Both the Hebrew Bible and cuneiform tablets, written in Nebuchadnezzar's second time, tell of events that took place, and the fate of the Ark of the Covenant, which contained tablets recording the 10 Commandments, is unknown. Some ancient writers say that the Ark was brought to Babylon, while others suggest that it was hidden away. After the destruction of the First Temple, a number of stories were spun telling tales of the location of the Lost Ark. In recent years, a number of cuneiform tablets have emerged from revealing the details of the lives of Jewish deportees who lived in a village called Al-Yahudu, which means a village of Judea. And many tablets of tablets were purchased by private collectors on the antiques market, raising concerns that some of the tablets may have been recently looted. And the tablets were written by Babylonian scribes on behalf of Judean families that lived in and around Al-Yahudu, and wrote Kathleen Abraham, professor of the University of Leuven in Belgium, in a paper she wrote about an exhibition casting light and shadow the story of Iran and the Jews. And the tablets show that the exiles of descendants had at least some extent adopted the local language, script and legal traditions of Babylonia, relatively short after their arrival there, with Abraham, and the Babylonians were eventually conquered by the Persian Empire, and the Persian king Cyrus the Great, who died in 530 BC, gave the Jews permission to return to Jerusalem. As the Persian Empire was virtually destroyed after a series of defeats inflicted on by Alexander the Great, who conquered the empire that stretched from Macedonia to what is now Afghanistan. And after Alexander's death in 323 BC, his empire rapidly fell apart, and one of his generals, Seleucus Nicator, formed a part of an empire that eventually controlled what was ancient Israel, called the Seleucid Empire, by a modern day historian, as the empire was passed down through the Seleucid line. And during the 2nd century, the Seleucid Empire began to weaken, and the line of Jewish rulers descended from a priest named Simon Maccabeus was able to gain semi-autonomy and eventually full independence from the Seleucids, and the line of rulers called the Hasmonean dynasty, led by modern day scholars, when by 100 BC the Hasmoneans managed to regain control of the territory that had once been controlled by Israel and Judah, and even a territory that those kingdoms had never controlled. However, the Hasmoneans' success was short-lived as Roman power grew in the Mediterranean, as the Hasmoneans were soon found themselves overmatched, and the Roman general Pompey took advantage of the Hasmonean civil war to launch a military expedition into lands that were controlled by the Hasmoneans. As Jerusalem fell to Pompey in 63 BC. At that point, all the territories that the Hasmoneans controlled were effectively under Roman rule. And while the Romans held sway over the former Hasmonean-controlled territories, they preferred not to impose their rule directly, as no more rules were allowed to control the territories as client kings of Rome, as most famous was of the client kings was Herod the Great, who lived from 73 BC to 4 BC. Now he built what is today called the Second Temple in Jerusalem, a replacement of sorts for the first temple that had been destroyed by the Babylonians centuries earlier. In 587 BC, Herod also constructed a series of fantastic palaces at Masada. As biblical literature often vilifies Herod, as he tried to seek out and kill baby Jesus, perceiving the infant to be a threat to his rule. As one biblical story claims that he killed all the infants living in Bethlehem in hopes of killing Jesus. As scholars are generally skeptical of these biblical claims and doubt they actually happened. And some scholars think that a group called ethnicities established a retreating Quran, or shortly after King Herod's time. And it was Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in nearby caves in the 1940s and 50s. And in 866 AD, between the region, Jewish inhabitants and Roman rulers came to a head, and a rebellion started and culminated in 70 AD in the siege of Jerusalem that destroyed the Second Temple, as resistance continued after the city's fall. As the last major stronghold of the rebels was at Masada, which didn't fall until 73 AD or 74 AD, after a protracted Roman siege. As Masada's defenders were part of a group of modern day scholars often refer to as the Zealots, and the ancient writer Josephus, who lived from 33 to 100 AD, wrote that the Zealots tried to take their own lives rather than to surrender to the Romans, and for hundreds of tenderly embraced their wives and took their children into their arms, and gave them longest passing kisses to them, with tears in their eyes before committed suicide, wrote Josephus. As further rebellions occurred over the decades, the final rebellion was crushed in 136 AD, as very ancient writer Cassius Dio, who lived from 155 to 235 AD, wrote that the last rebellion led to the desolation of the Jewish population, and he claimed that the Roman forces killed about 580,000 Jewish men. Oh, Pinterest. 580,000 men were slain in the various raids and battles. A number of those perished by famine, disease, and fire was past finding out. Thus, nearly the whole of Judea was made desolate, Dio wrote. As translation by Ernest Carey from the volume 8 of the Leo Classical Library, published in 1925. Archaeologists are still finding treasure hoards buried by people who lived during the rebellion and all. And the millennia afterwards, the Jewish diaspora spread throughout the world, and it wasn't until the establishment of the modern state of Israel in 1948 that the Jewish people had homeland again. Yeah, moving from Israel to Palestine. Palestine is still relevant, as Palestine was a common name used until 1945 to describe the geographical region between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River. And in its history, Assyrian, Babylonian, Roman, Byzantine, and Ottoman empires have controlled Palestine at one time or another. After World War I, Palestine was administered by the United Kingdom under a mandate received in 1992 from the League of Nations. And modern history of Palestine begins with termination of the British Mandate, the partition of Palestine and creation of Israel, and ensuring Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And in 1947, the UN proposed a partition plan for Palestine titled United Nations General Assembly Resolution 181 to number 2, Future Government of Palestine. Resolution noted British plan termination of the British Mandate for Palestine and recommended the partition of Palestine into 2 states, one Jewish and one Arab, with Jerusalem, Bethlehem, an area protected by administration and administered by the United Nations. As a resolution included a highly detailed description of the recommended boundaries for each proposed state, as the resolution also contained plans for economic union between proposed states for the prospects of religious minority rights. As the resolution also called for the withdrawal of British forces and the termination of the mandate by August 1948 and the establishment of the new independent states by October 1948. And the Jewish leadership accepted the partition plan, but the Arab leaders had rejected it, as the Arab League threatened to take military measures to prevent the partition of Palestine, to ensure the national rights of the Palestinian Arab population. One day before the British mandate expired, Israel declared its independence within the borders of a Jewish state and set out the partition plan. And the Arab countries declared war on the newly formed State of Israel, beginning in the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. And after the war, which Palestinians called a catastrophe, the 1949 Armistice Agreement established the separation lines between the combatants. Israel controlled the same areas designed for the Arab states under the partition plan. Transjordan controlled the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and Egypt controlled the Gaza Strip. And then there was a thing called a 6-day war. The 6-day war was fought between June 5th and 10th, 1967, with Israel emerging victorious and effectively seizing control of the Gaza Strip and Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria. The UN Security Council adopted Resolution 240, the Land of Peace, following which called for Israeli withdrawing from territories occupied in 1967 and the termination of all claims or states' belligerency, as Resolution 242 recognised the right of every state in the area to live in peace without secure and recognised boundaries, free from threats or acts of force. And in October 1973, a war broke out again between Israel and Egypt, and the Sinai and Syria in the Golan Heights, and a ceasefire achieved by UN Resolution 339, and US peacekeepers deployed on both the fronts, only withdrawing from the Egyptian front after Israel and Egypt concluded a peace treaty in 1979, and UN peacekeepers can remain deployed on the Golan Heights. In 1974, the Arab League recognised the Palestine Liberation Organization (PLO) as sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, and relinquished its role as representative of the West Bank. The PLO gained observer status at the UN Assembly at the same year. In 1998, the Palestinian National Council, or PLO, approved the Palestinian Declaration of Independence in Algiers, Tunisia, as the declaration proclaims the state of Palestine or Palestinian territories with its capital of Jerusalem, although it does not specify exact borders, and asserts UN Resolution 108 support to the rights of Palestinians and Palestinians in Palestine. As the declaration was accompanied by a PLO call for multilingual negotiations for the basis of UN Resolution 242, and the conditions of the West Bank and Gaza Strip, including Jerusalem, after more than 20 years of military occupation, repression and confiscation of land, contributed to a Palestinian uprising called Intifada in December 1987, and between 1987 and 1993, over 1,000 Palestinians were killed and thousands injured, detained and imprisoned in Israel or deported from the Palestinian territories. In 1993, the Oslo Accord suffered serious setback with the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, the Israeli Prime Minister and signer of Oslo Accords, in November 1995, and since 1995 several peace summits and proposals, including the Camp David Summit in 2000, Tabor Summit in 2001, and the Road Map for Peace 2002 and the Arab Peace Initiative 2002 and 2007 have attempted to broker a solution but with no success. And in a speech on the 16th of September 2011, Mahmoud Abbas, president of the Palestinian National Authority, declared his intention to proceed with the request for recognition of statehood from both United Nations General Assembly and the Security Council on September 23, 2011, as President Abbas delivered official application for the recognition of the Palestinian state to the United Nations Security General, as numerous issues remain to be settled by Israelis and Palestinians. However, before an independent state of Palestine emerges and negotiations are still going, but with Donald Trump recognising Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, who knows what's going to happen. And moving on to language, Israel is a country in the Middle East that has existed since the 1990s, making it the youngest in the region, and a haven for persecuted Jews, and is developed into a strong military power. Its population is made up of a variety of ethnicities, most of whom practice Judaism, but does include other religious groups, and is conflict with Palestine since it declared sovereign state after World War II. And the stance its government has about Palestine and some other countries has stirred up controversy over years. As about 3/4 of the population, or 75%, was originally from somewhere else, and it's no wonder there will be a great amount of linguistic diversity, as there's 4 common languages spoken in Israel. Now, the first being Hebrew, which is the language of Judaism, which would make sense in a self-proclaimed Jewish state, as Hebrew would be at least one of the official languages, and it's used for official purposes from government to education and even court sessions. Hebrew is required language in Arabic schools from the 3rd grade onward, and in Israeli schools students have to pass the Hebrew language exam to matriculate. And besides Israel, there aren't any other countries with Hebrew as more a minority language, as Israeli immigrants have brought into some countries, but mostly it remains the liturgical language outside of the country. The next is Arabic, although might be getting kicked out of being an official language and all, as Arabic is another official language, specifically literary Arabic, as many other dialects are spoken by Israeli citizens of Arab descent. As you can see, Arabic on road signs and all that, for labels for food, and spoken in any government messages, but before 2000 it wasn't so common, as Arabic speakers make up about 20% of the population of Israel, and the form is long overdue, as Arabic speakers are generally fluent in Hebrew as well, and speaking it as a second language, but it doesn't mean that they should be subjected to having it as only to be available in Hebrew and all. Third is English, and thanks to British colonisation, as English used to be one of the official languages of what would become an independent state of Israel, but changed after 1948, and now English has no real official status, but is one of the more common languages in the area of foreign exchange and relations with most countries, and most Israelis can speak it quite well and all, and is a required second language for students in both Hebrew and Arabic schools, as Israelis who travel tend to have very high levels of English, which make it easy for them to get around. And then there's a fourth, which might be surprising, which is Russian, but is, as it's not kind of like a non-official language, but is spoken by a number of people in Israel, as there was mass immigration from the USSR of Russian Jews. He made up a good portion of the Jewish population of Israel. In fact, about 20% more of Israelis speak Russian fluently, which gives you a deal of how many might here in Israel. There's many businesses and governments, as well as make sure they provide information in Russian, as is even an Israeli TV channel in Russian. And yeah, moving on to the legends quickly, as we're going to be talking about the story of Moses. As Egypt comes into it a little. Again, it's according to the Bible, the descendants of Jacob had lived in Egypt for more than 450 years, during which time they grew into a nation of Israel. As the Egyptians began to see them as a threat and tightened their control on them, forcing them to work as slaves. Eventually, in an attempt to reduce their numbers, newborn Israelite babies were drowned in the River Nile. As the baby says that the Israelites asked for God to help, and as he sent them a leader in the form of Moses. And in order to escape death, Moses' mother placed him in a basket when he was still a baby and set him adrift in the River Nile. And she left his fate up to God's will, and the infant Moses was rescued by the Pharaoh's daughter and brought up in a palace as a royal prince. As an adult, Moses reacted against the unfair treatment of his own people and killed an Egyptian guard, as Moses was then forced to flee the wrath of the Pharaoh, and he was driven into exile in the land of Midian, and he married Zipporah, daughter of a priest of Midian, and he worked as a shepherd for 40 years. And one day when he was in the desert, Moses heard a voice of God speaking to him through a bush, which produced flames but didn't exactly burn as such, as God asked Moses to lead his people out of slavery in Egypt and to the promised land. And Moses was first reluctant, thinking that the Israelites would not believe he had heard the word of God, as God then gave Moses special powers, and inspired by this, Moses returned to Egypt and demanded freedom for his people. And at first, Pharaoh refused to let the Israelites leave, and then God unleashed the 10 plagues on the Egyptians. And it was the 10th plague, the plague of the firstborn, which eventually persuaded the Pharaoh to let them go. And it was announced that the firstborn sons in every household would die, but the son of the Israelites would be saved if they marked their doorposts with the blood of a lamb killed in sacrifice. And they had to cook the lamb and eat it that night with bitter herbs and unleavened bread. And in these origins, the Jewish festival of Passover began. And the Pharaoh then changed his mind and sent an army in pursuit of the Israelites, as 600 chariots pursued them, but famously the waters of the Red Sea parted as the Israelites walked through. And then the waters returned and destroyed Pharaoh's army. And travelling through the desert for nearly three months, the Israelites camped before Mount Sinai, and there God appeared to Moses and made an agreement or covenant with him, as God declared that the Israelites were his own people, and that they must listen to God and obey his laws. And these laws were the 10 Commandments, which were given to Moses on 2 stone tablets, and they set out the basic principles that would govern the Israelites' lives. As the evidence of known in the books of Exodus says, at the crossing of the Red Sea, Moses led the Hebrews onto Sinai, where they spent 40 years wandering the wilderness and 3 months in the desert. The Hebrews camped at the foot of the mountain of God, and on the mountain God appeared to Moses and changed everyone's lives, as the precise location of the mountain of God has always been a mystery. And one suggestion is at Mount Sinai, the highest peak in the southern desert. Every night of the year, pilgrims and tourists set off in the cool hours of the morning to make the arduous 3-hour climb to the top of a mountain. And no one really knows if it is God, mountain of God. And we all know, know little about the Ten Commandments, and we don't even know where they were written or who exactly wrote them. But one theory is that they could have been written only when the Hebrews had settled in the Promised Land, because only then could the commandments have been enforced. But the first commandment seems more likely to have come from one man's meeting with God in the desert, as Moses himself could have been the author of some of the commandments, and as he had been taught to read and write in a royal nursery. And and there's been some discussion over the years, as some scientists believe that the Ten Commandments weren't all at once, kind of thing, like one after another in quick succession, but were kind of more gradual and all, and that when the Jewish population left for the Promised Land, it was kind of like a couple at a time, not like mass emigration and all. And yeah, that is Israel and Palestine for you. And yeah, I'll see you all later, and bye for now.